My name is Brittany Whiters, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Canna Health Digital Magazine, which is a free online publication emphasizing knowledge, safe access, and advocacy. It is my pleasure to introduce our next segment, which is Cooking with Cannabis. Throughout the years, cannabis consumption has evolved and become more innovative. From a simple joint to an exquisite and tasty dish, anything is possible. Today, we're joined by a cannabis chef as he shares his journey and a cannabis dish with us. Manny Mendoza is the founder of Herbal Notes, which is a communal dinner experience with cannabis-infused dishes. He is a graduate of the Culinary Institute of America, and he has been passionately cooking with cannabis since 2012. We are very grateful to have you. So, Manny, tell us a little bit more about what made you get into the cannabis cooking space.
I wanted to get into cannabis cooking, mostly because I've always been cooking for most of my life, and I've been smoking for a very large portion of my life. So I think kind of naturally those two roads were meant to intersect. And it wasn't until I was in culinary school when I was becoming more exposed to what's possible and what's happening all around the world in terms of dining and cuisine and innovation that, it just clicked in my head that maybe cannabis could be another wave of eating and fine dining and enjoying cannabis and experiencing it in a whole new way that would be it would allow a bigger demographic of people to enjoy it and see it in a new light. So that's kind of how I got into it. Is I just realized the untapped potential of cooking with cannabis in a thoughtful way.
I didn't even take into consideration that it would probably reach a much more larger demographic when mixed with food.
Eats.
Because food, right? Exactly.
Yeah, everybody
brings
eats.
Everybody together. Yep.
And once you realize that you don't need to get high from the food, it just kind of explodes your mind as to what's possible when it comes to cannabis consumption.
Absolutely. So, as the founder of Herbal Notes, tell me, how did that come about, and what you do in there in the company?
Okay, yeah. Herbal Notes was conceived in 2017 as pretty much an idea that I've had about wanting to cook with cannabis and give that experience to people for the first time. Because I had friends who smoked, and obviously I had friends who they eat food and they went out to restaurants, but there was nowhere in my immediate surrounding where both those two things were happening at the same time. It was curated in a special way, in a way that paid respect to the actual plant and the movement. So that didn't exist in 2013. Neither did the medical pilot program in Illinois. And obviously recreational didn't exist. So this was pretty much a completely different time in terms of how people perceived cannabis. But I knew that's what I wanted to do. But I also understood the reality that it probably wasn't going to be something that started in Chicago. So I actually had to move to California. And that's when my whole journey with cannabis, a lot of other things started, including Herbal Notes.
Awesome. So then what does Herbal Notes do? Do you guys just hold events where people have a dining experience, or do you cook for other people for maybe parties, dinner parties or something?
Yeah, all of the above. We hold all kinds of gatherings and dinners, mixers, any kind of event that would incorporate food and drink and cannabis. The only difference is that we curate everything to be, specific to the cannabis plant. and we try to pay homage to the actual plant and show it in a different light for people, so that they, if they're a first-time user and they come to our event, they'll have a completely different experience of what cannabis is like than if they, smoked a joint or a blunt on the street for the first time, or if they've seen kids or teenagers do that. It doesn't really like sync up with them, with most consumers nowadays. So it had to be something that the kind of events that we do have to be something that appeal to a much larger audience. So that's where my background in hospitality and fine dining allowed me to see what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously with my background in cannabis, it was just marrying the two together. So we host, I wouldn't say upscale, but our style is definitely one that it's unique, and especially unique to Chicago and the city. And you can tell that we care about everything, every aspect of it, from the food to the cannabis to every single aspect of the experience. So all of those things, have a holistic healing power when you bring people together. Absolutely. In an environment like that. So that's kind of what Herbal Notes has done and how it came to be and why it does what it does, because it's just become like a staple in the community for bringing people together around this plant in a whole new way.
I will go ahead and let you take the stage, and let's see what we can eat.
Cool. Well, today I'm going to be putting together a very simple dish that is, culturally important to me. I'm a Salvadoran, so I'm making a Salvadoran style pupusa, which is kind of similar to a Mexican gordita, or kind of like a quesadilla if you really don't know anything about Latin foods. But yeah, basically you start with a ball of masa. So this is corn dough, corn that's been cooked and then grinded up, and then emulsified with water and a little bit of fat. And that makes it more pliable and easy to work with. So this, you're just going to flatten it into a disc. And traditionally they're stuffed with cheese, beans, meat. You can put vegetables, any kind of stuffing you want really. But then you just ball it up, flatten it, and then grill it on a griddle. So I'm gonna turn mine on. The corn dough. So I'm gonna put a nice little chunk of cheese right inside the masa dough. And I'm gonna take this scoop. This is basically a paste, baby back ribs that's been fried with onions, jalapenos, tomato, garlic, and beer, and then just cooked down so it falls off the bone. And it's slightly chopped up so that it could be more like paste. And that way it doesn't puncture the pupusa. And then you just flatten it. Start to bring it in. Then I like to finish it with just a little bit more cheese. And then seal it shut. So inside this ball is pork, baby back ribs, and cheese. Let that hang for a second while the pan gets hot. I'm gonna take this plantain. So I cut this ripe plantain into quarters. I'm gonna fry it. Got a fire set up on the back. Then, so we have some of the garnishes laid out. There's a Salvadoran lime crema, black bean puree, and then infused tomato salsa. So this salsa is the component that has the cannabis. So I take my cannabis product, and I put it into this machine with whatever oil or fat that I want, set it, activate it, infuse it, and then I dispense it and I use that oil for virtually anything that I want to do with it. So if I wanted to, I could put it into the dough and the masa, put it into any of the sauces, and it allows me to calibrate it. I know exactly, roughly, depending on the product that I put into it, I know exactly how many milligrams THC is in each serving. So it's 2 ounces. This gives me 20 milligrams based off of the product that I put into there initially. Plantain's frying right now. This is the matzo pupusa that I'm going to flatten. Kind of like spin it in a circle, making sure that the edges are smooth. And then you just flatten it. See where it off as you go. So I think this is one of my favorite parts of cooking with cannabis, is making dishes that are traditional to my family, and then infusing it. I think that's the best way to start to bring in people in your family to experience the same things that you do. So now that I got it pretty flat, put it right there. So I use the Vivo oil machine for most of my infusions, only because it's just a really efficient machine that allows me to set an exact temperature, set it for an exact time, and allows me to decarboxylate or activate the THC that's in the raw plant material. And then also another setting to allow a lower temp infusion so that all the cannabinoids can infuse properly into whatever the fat is that you're using. So I use anything from MCT oil to extra virgin olive oil to canola and corn oil. You can use any kind of fat. Clarified butter is another one. And this machine works super well because it'll activate it and then infuse it and then it's dispense it out so that it's ready to immediately be used. So it starts right here. I already have some in here at the moment. You see, just like that. I put the cannabis product in here, and you can use anything from flour to keef. You can use trim and shake. I don't recommend it, but you can. Also, you can use any kind of cannabis concentrate, waxes, rosins, BHOs. Yeah, any kind of cannabis product in here that isn't already activated. You can slide it in there, put your oil, your fat inside, and then you just set this thing. So it has 3 different settings: one to dry cannabis flower, one to activate or decarboxylate it. So that's when you turn THCA into THC through the process of heat transfer. And then you can also set it to infuse. So that's it drops the temperature down to be a lot lower, but for a longer time. That way, all the cannabinoids that are inside of that are now activated are now inside and properly infused with the fat, properly bound to the fat molecules. And then, you just, when it's done, kind of like a Keurig machine when you dispense coffee, you just press a button and it all comes out. And when it comes out, it's just ready to use. So I like to make condiments because then I can control how much I want to put onto whatever food that I want to put it on. This is almost ready. In this case, I took this oil and then I infused it into this tomato salsa that I made. So tomatoes, garlic, oregano, red habaneros. What else goes in here? Apple cider vinegar, apple juice. So it's a really delicious sauce. And then I just emulsify it in a blender really with the cannabis oil. There's already enough fat in here to where it'll properly emulsify and mix since most of it is already oil. I mean, foods that I've grown up with, this one in particular, the pupusa, this is a Salvadoran dish. And it's one that I personally think needs more attention. So being able to infuse a dish like this is awesome because it's almost like a gateway to be able to speak and communicate and connect with people in my family, people who don't smoke or don't really use cannabis. But now in 2020, they're kind of teetering on the edge of like, maybe I'll try it because it's everywhere. It's legalized.
Right.
There are actual studies about the potential health benefits and what it can actually do. So the more information that gets out, the easier it is to start to now want to experiment with cannabis with our families. And the reason why is because a lot of them are stressed out, or a lot of them have, ailments or something that is just kind of like ticking at them every day, where cannabis is something that could just kind of bring that edge, that stress down just enough to where things aren't as bad.
Have you had a family member that has been anti-cannabis or skeptical of it and changed their whole perspective once you introduced this way of consumption?
Yes. Yes, I did have family members that were very strict anti-cannabis. In particular, my mom, but to no fault of her own, she's an immigrant from El Salvador, which is a Central American country that very small, but has a very notorious history for decades. For everything from the Civil War to gang violence, homicides. There's so many negative things that are associated with anything having to do with drugs, any kind of drug. Those people don't see weed how we see weed. They see it as they don't see it as cannabis. They see it as basically a death sentence. So my mom, she definitely changed just because she sees the legality of it popping up all over the country. She's also seen my growth in this space. So she definitely knows now that it's something, it's not nothing. She's way more proud than she's ever been. And she's always been proud, but now she's starting to see, cannabis and food really start to go mainstream in the whole country. And she sees like her son's actually a part of that. So, you know, her whole idea of it and mentality behind it has definitely changed and transformed. She doesn't smoke yet, but you know, that's probably not what I'm going to start her off with. But we get to that point, you know, she's definitely going to have a little bit of the infused salsa. She said, save me some. You know, maybe get her to take a little micro dab at one of these days. But
how do you store it?
So after I infuse my oil and activate it, I dispense it, usually put it into a container or a mason jar, and you can store it in a refrigerator, but you don't have to. You know, depending on how much you make, this really only makes about 16 ounces, about 2 cups, almost, like barely, per batch. So per 2.5 hours, only get 2 cups. So it's really not that much. It doesn't make a huge batch, but this, you know, this is for at-home personal use, so that's actually fine. Plus, if you wanted to make something more potent, you just put more cannabis product in there, so that now your yield is going to be twice as potent with THC, activated THC. So I got a little rice. The sauce plantains. So we'll take our lime crema. Nice. Sugar on there. Bean. This is a black bean puree. Shut that. Then we'll take our infused tomato salsa. And I like to finish with a little cotija cheese. Yeah. Oh wait. And cabbage. I don't know if you can see it.
Yep, I can. Could you say again what was that you put on top?
This is curtido, which is basically lightly pickled cabbage.
Okay, Manny, thank you so much for making that meal for us. Papuras? Did I pronounce it correctly?
Pupusas.
Pupusas. Thank you so
Yes.
much. That looks great. We really appreciate your time and your talents for joining us today and giving this great cooking demonstration. Yes. Now I'm hungry. That looks great.